And welcome back to my channel. Unless you're new here, and then just welcome. My name is Rusty, and this is my channel where I spotlight and talk about my favorite movies, mostly horror, and my favorite music, mostly metal. And we are going to talk about Thanksgiving. For Thanksgiving. This was a first time watch for me. Yes, I know. I bought it the month it came out, and it's sat over there ever since, like so many other of my movies, till I finally get around to watching them. And this is Thanksgiving. So this was a first time watch. I watched all these upcoming videos for the first time. And yeah, so Thanksgiving was released in 2023. It was directed by Eli Roth. And it was written by Jeff Rendell and Eli Roth, whom have been best friends since they were little kids. It stars Patrick Dempsey, Ty Olsson, and Gina Gershon, which, it was cool to see her. I just recently had gotten a movie from 2012. I got the Blu-ray of her and Val Kilmer right before he got sick with him. And that movie is so fucking hilarious. And it's called Breathless from 2012. So, I like Gina Gershon. She's pretty cool. And Val Kilmer was good in it, too. But, yes. Eli Roth's Thanksgiving. So, this movie opens with our sheriff, Eric, who is played by Patrick Dempsey. He is stopping by to have Thanksgiving with Mitch and Amanda. Some other guests arrive, and that includes Thomas and Kathleen Wright. They own the Wright Mart. And his daughter Jessica, her stepdaughter, she's the new stepmom for about a year. We're introduced to her boyfriend at the time, Bobby. And yeah, so Mitch has to leave early because he works for Thomas and them at the Wright Mart. So he has to go to work, and they're having, of course, their Black Friday sale, and he gets there. They only hired two. They're cheap, so they only hired two security guards, this big, hefty, fat guy, and yeah, so there is this gigantic mob, and I'm like, is it really like that on Black Friday? I don't know. I've never been to a Black Friday sale that I know of, that I can remember. I'm not that desperate for anything. And plus I shop online, so. But I've never been to one of those, so I'm not sure. Is it really like that? Are Black Friday sales really, are people really that crazy for a toaster oven and stuff like that? I don't know. I always thought it was a myth, but okay. So there's this huge, scary mob waiting, and one of the main attractions is Libby, this large woman. We get to see her in the movie, and Larry. They're the two most loudest of this mob, wanting to get in. It's 10 minutes till it gets in. Now, Jessica and her friends, Jessica and Bobby and Evan and all them, her friends, they end up going to the movies, but they stop by for a minute. They go through a side door because her dad works there, and her dad owns it, and all of this kind of stuff. So they go in early, and they actually. And I guess was the big mistake, is that they taunt the crowd outside by holding up all of the goodies, making them even more pissed off. And this starts this gigantic, absurd riot, which in America is absolutely not near as absurd as you would think it is. So, yeah, there's this absolutely absurd riot, and they bust through the windows and trample the security guard, and the big one where he runs. And there is a lot of really gross stuff that goes on. Eli was really over the top with a lot of this stuff in a very good way. And that gross scene where Amanda gets killed, so Gina Gershon's character gets killed, and Mitch freaks out, and everybody is just freaked out. And that's at which, we sort of zoom forward a year after this big disaster. And Bobby, he's disappeared. His arm was all busted up. And he disappeared like right after that. Just ghosted everyone and disappeared. So everybody is trying to deal with it. Mitch has become like a seriously upset activist about it all because his wife was killed, and he wants, can't believe that they're going to have a sale and stuff like that after this tragedy, which is understandable. So he's very against that. Thomas and Kathleen are really hated, about all of this stuff. So it is a very, very, touchy situation. And it's then that we start seeing what has happened to the people. Bobby has left. Jessica is now sort of dating this, what's his name? Dave or something like that. Dave. But so she's dating a new guy. Nobody's ever seen Bobby. We get to see them at the restaurant, and we find out that that's where that Libby woman worked because, she was so prominent in that riot. And she's just carrying on, with all this stuff that happened. You can tell she didn't give a shit. Well, you could tell that then. But so that's the first kill that we get to see is Libby getting killed, and that is absolutely a remarkable scene. She gets at the end of that scene, she gets cut in half in the skip, which is absolutely hilarious. And her body, or half of her body, is left sitting on the top of the sign at Walmart. So obviously somebody is very upset about that riot that occurred. And that's the mystery of the story. So she's cut in half at the skip, trying to get away from this killer who wears the John Carver mask that you can see, that's him. And all of this stuff is happening, and they're also upset because they're going to have the usual Thanksgiving parade and stuff like that. So a lot of the people are not happy about that, especially Mitch. So she apologized, Bobby ends up returning, and he's like, I'm sorry, you had to get away. And he's of course who you suspect, right? It ruined his baseball career. So he's the one that you expect, which meant I knew it couldn't be him. If it had been him, I wouldn't have liked the movie near as much because he is so obvious, but you still never know with these people what they're going to do. Jessica keeps being questioned by the police. Everybody has been about, what occurred at the riot, especially since security footage is missing. It's the security footage of the people and who did what and everything at this riot just vanished. And it's Jessica who admits to the sheriff that it was Kathleen that had deleted it. However, there was a backup at the house, so she gets Bobby to go with her. They want to look at that footage to see, if they can see anything. And, anything of interest. Now, when she's looking at it, she does notice that Dave is hugging the one. There was this black guy who was a security guard, and then there was the big fat white guy. And she sees Dave, hugging him. So she's immediately suspicious because he supposedly didn't know anyone in town at that time. And so what was he doing hugging this guy? And that started the suspicion of Dave. We then get to see the fat guy we get to see his kill scene, which was absolutely amazing as well. And it did have some humor in it, in that when the killer was through with him, which was a very good kill scene, he notices the cat, and he feeds the cat and scratches its head. And I don't know why that made me laugh, but it did make me laugh. I mean, it's just not what you assume, that somebody who just did what they did would be worried about the cat and feeding it, and filling of its head and petting it and stuff. So it was pretty interesting. There's a lot of that in this movie where you have Eli Roth's little dark comedy threads running to it. So Jess and her group, they keep being posted. They keep being tagged in a post from an anonymous source that has this like completely set up Thanksgiving dinner table. And now that the bodies have started going, we've got Libby dead, we've got the security guard dead. They actually noticed that their names are on the nameplates and at the table. So the mystery has gotten very good to me. When I was watching this movie, I'm like, I'm pretty invested. I'm really enjoying myself, and I am wondering, I'm looking for all the clues and trying to figure out who it is, who I think did, who I think is doing it, and that's what's fun about these movies. So she sees Ryan on the tape, like I said. Everybody starts theorizing about Ryan. They're starting to distrust him and wondering who it is. We then get to see the infamous trampoline scene. That's where some cheerleader gets Larry to go in there, and she's jumping up and down on the trampoline. That was from the fake trailer from 20 years ago that Eli Roth had done, that had everybody waiting for this movie for 2 decades, which is pretty funny. But that was a really good, scene, because it didn't do it like as much as the trailer kind of led you to believe. It didn't hit her where I thought it was going to hit her, because I'm used to that old trailer. So you kind of thought, well, they're going to make this really disgustingly inappropriate. But they really didn't, that I noticed. It stabbed her all over the place, of course, as she was bouncing on the trampoline. But that particular split in the air thing really didn't. I didn't notice it anyway. It didn't look like that happened. So her and him are now dead. They were killed there. And we see Jessica going back to the high school where Evan is kidnapped. Evan and that girl is kidnapped. I'm trying to see my notes. I'm trying to remember their names. I just watched this last night. I don't remember that many names that quickly. I'll have to watch it, It'll definitely be a tradition. But until then, some of their names are going to escape me. But so Evan disappears. Now she's attacked by John Carver in there, but she manages to get away. And they start thinking that, maybe they can set a trap or something for the parade to try to get this guy. So she did manage to get away from him that way in a really cool, typical slasher chase scene, which he did very well. Trying to find the good parts. They do get the message where Evan and Gabby were, tied up at the table. So everybody is really intensely looking for him at this time. Then we approach I think while it was going on, I kind of knew that this was going to be unexpectedly my favorite scene of the movie. And it was because it was Kathleen. Because, now we see him at this undisclosed location, and he's got her knocked out, and he's buttering her up and putting garlic and stuff on her. Obviously, he's going to cook her or something. And once that scene started, my attention level, which, has been perfectly fine throughout this movie, but my attention level sort of went through the roof at this point. And I kind of thought about it as that scene went on. I'm like, I think this is going to be my favorite scene because, and it was shocking to me because she was there. She was a character in this film, but she didn't seem to play enough of a role that her scene in the movie would become like a focal point for, at least for my attention to this movie. But when she came awake while he was buttering her up and stuff and managed to get up and start running from him, this was like one of the two big stealth chase scenes. You know, you have your chase scenes where people know they're being chased, and it's just a straight run, a dash, bob and weave kind of chase. But then there's the stealth chase scene, and that's basically where you're playing hide and seek. It's slower, it's more intense, more scary. You're trying to avoid them, make all the right moves. And that scene with Kathleen trying to outdo him was absolutely phenomenal. And once the movie was over, Kathleen's stealth chase scene and her kill, that is my favorite part of the movie. I was like completely glued to the screen during Kathleen's bob and weave stealth chase scene from John Carver. So that was unexpected, as I didn't expect Kathleen, who seemed like a side character in the movie to me, that her role would become so prominent when her scene was so fucking intense. And I felt really terrible when she got out the door and got stabbed through the back with that pitchfork and then cooked alive in there. That was just like, wow, that was wicked. And so that is my favorite scene in the movie, is Kathleen's chase scene, trying to get away from him. And the parade goes on, and they do try to spring a trap on him, but he like surprises them all by being like a killer clown from outer space. So they're looking for John Carver, and instead he's wearing a clown suit, and he starts mayhem, which allows him to kidnap Jess and, what was that, Scuba? Was that what he's called? Scuba? It was like really weird. They even made fun of it in the movie. Like, why are you called Scuba? You know. So they managed to get them and Thomas and all that. And so they all end up around the Thanksgiving table when they all come to. And then he comes out. John Carver comes out. And he's talking his shit. Being a smart ass, talking to them about how they think they're VIPs and special. So that harkens back to their behavior at the riot, where they were egging everyone, on that they were special in the store, holding up all that stuff. So he's bringing up all of this stuff. And then he starts to serve them dinner, and he jerks that towel off, and it's Kathleen, and her head's sitting there, but she really is like in the shape of a turkey, which was just something else. And when he like started cutting that slice off her thigh, and I didn't really understand how the girl that was already dead, how he, drained her blood, because I don't know. That was like the only little thing that made me go, is that possible? Does that really happen? The dead person is sitting there. Can you poke them in the neck and fill up a glass with their blood? I don't know. I didn't think you bled after you were dead, but I don't know. So that was the only faux pas or possible faux pas that I saw in the movie. So McCarthy, which is another cool little side thing in this movie, the McCarty party, That was hilarious. And it's this like guns and ammo dude and his little sidekick. It's like, I don't know. I mean, there were times when I thought they were like together, if you know what I mean, because, but he had given her a ring and she didn't know it until they were sitting around that table, but it had a little like penknife or something that stuck up, and she was able to undo her hands and then pass it to Scuba, if I'm saying his name right. And he was able to get loose, and so this big bam boom, fight took place. She managed to get away, and that was pretty intense. She uses the ring from McCarty to get loose. Scuba, yeah, see, there it is in my notes. Scuba. Scuba's loose. They run. They have the big, slasher fight as usual. Jess does manage to get back to town, where she found what she thought was the sheriff dead on the road, and took his gun and went back into the place, into the warehouse where the floats were and all for the parade, and saw Bobby getting out of a John Carver suit. So it was at that moment that I was like, no, now come on. I told you at the beginning of the movie, you better not make it Bobby, because that was so fucking obvious that I couldn't believe that he would do that. And so I still didn't believe it. Then, the sheriff, he's like debriefing her, and, we've rescued the other people. Of course, you can't do nothing about Evan, that, and Kathleen, and the other people that were dead at the table. But that scene with Evan upset me because, my record holds true. He was my favorite of the gang, and of course he's got to get his brains bashed out, and that was ugly. So, the sheriff had told her all that, was debriefing her, and everything will be all right, yada yada. When the way that he's talking sort of like piques her suspicion, and then she looks down and she notices his shoes. And he had told her earlier in the movie that they would find this guy, that he would make mistakes because, it's the small details that give things away. Well, she had noticed his shoes and the way they looked, the way they sounded, and they had mud on them, which there was no reason for him to have mud on. So he starts to walk out the door, and he sort of realizes the same thing. I noticed it, so she probably noticed it. Oh well, the jig is up. So she turned around, and we get the big reveal, and that is that the sheriff, and I really didn't expect him, the sheriff had been having an affair with Amanda. Not only that, but she was pregnant. She was fixing to leave Mitch and marry him. So these people had taken his potential new family away from him. And that's the reason for this massacre. So it was the sheriff. So I did give kudos to Eli at this moment, because I'm like, okay, all right. It's okay that you had people suspecting Bobby, but there's just no way you could have let it be Bobby, and he didn't. It was the sheriff all along. So they managed to fight him. Bobby shows up, of course, got to have the rescue. They start fighting him. Pretty good scenes. Those chase scenes were pretty good. Fight scenes. And then she manages like to load. The only gun she knew how to use was an old-fashioned musket. So she managed to do that, and she had started the helium in I guess it was helium, but she had started it in the balloon, in the big giant float. So she shot it and blew it up and incinerated the sheriff. And everyone is okay, and it all ended well. except for the fact that they couldn't find a shred of his body. So, I don't know. Did he manage to get away? I mean, I certainly have no intention of waiting 20 years for him to make a sequel, but it was left open. They didn't find any of his body. So, yeah, I was, that I'm trying to think of some scenes I may have skipped. I know the Russian girl that was going to go to Florida, her scene was absolutely horrific. That murder was over the top, beyond the pale, on that table saw. But yeah, I really, really enjoyed this movie. A lot of great scenes. It was very, very ode to not just 80s, but it was just a big ode to the slasher genre in general. It checked not all of them. It didn't check all of the boxes, but it checked most of them. You had no TNA in this movie. So it didn't check the slasher TNA box, but it pretty much had everything else. Excellent kills, very, very good movie, and should definitely be a tradition. One of those movies that goes on your traditions list. Like mine for Christmas is always Silent Night, Deadly Night, the original, and it's always that Australian film with Levi Miller, so we all have that, and this will definitely be a tradition film. Of course, I'll watch it at any time, but I gave it an 8.4 out of 10. I really, really loved it. It was really great, and I think Eli did a fantastic job on it. And I'm glad to have finally seen it just a couple of days before Thanksgiving, and I loved it. It was great. I had an absolutely wonderful time with it. So, yeah, tell me what you think about Thanksgiving. Do you like it? Will it be a traditional movie for you? A tradition, as in a tradition movie that you watch every time near Thanksgiving? And any thoughts you may have about whether you approve of his work. Did he make a good slasher? Did he do it justice? Because I think that he really did. And I'm very glad to have it. And yeah, that was Thanksgiving from 2023. And I hope you're having a really good Thanksgiving tonight, and are thankful that you are not being chased around by John Carver or cooked in an oven like Kathleen and served up to your family. See, no matter how bad your life is, there is something to be thankful for. You are not being served as Thanksgiving dinner. Better than nothing, right? So I will see you in the next movie. I'm going to do a few slashers now and a few little horror movies. So, yeah, I'll see you in the next. Love you, miss you, bye. Always remember and never forget, you're a very, very special person. No matter what anybody tells you, you are the only one of you, and never let them tell you any different. Feel it and be it. And, yeah, I'll see you in the next video. That was Thanksgiving. Bye-bye. Patrick Dempsey was really great in this movie. He's aging well, in my opinion. So yes, Thanksgiving, a new horror classic. I believe it, because it is really good. And I'll see you in the next. Bye-bye.